Okay, so this is a VR to snedmeister, which is SNED Meister. You can find him by searching for it. And he only has one video on his channel, and it's a response to Lamb Dog and I's discussion on UBI. Where to start, man? I'm going to call this video the dystopia of UBI, because that's kind of what I think you're discussing in your video for the most part. But at the start of your video, you separated the idea of UBI and the AI powered humanoid robots, which is fine. Yeah, do whatever you want to do. But to me, these issues are inherently linked, because basically UBI is communism. We know communism with human workers is a, you know, what's it called? What is word? It's a non-effective system. Like, it ends in the way it ends every fucking time. The only thing that might change this would be having a workforce that you don't pay for, that does all the work, and you can just pay your citizens. You know, the issue, one of the big issues in communism, anyway, is, who does the work. If you pay everyone the same, whether they sit home or not, how do you continue to have bread on the shelves and shit? The AI robots answer that. So to me, this is what brings up the discussion of whether UBI should be done at all. I'm not for UBI without an automated workforce, for obvious fucking reasons. I mean, go look at the history of the USSR. I mean, there's other communist regimes that you could take examples of or whatever, but they are the textbook case of why communism doesn't fucking work. But again, I think the robots would change this, and the other thing that would have to occur to change this would be to eliminate what you're talking about, which is this dystopian-like effect it would have to have. If we implemented this in our current system with our current politicians, let the Democrats be in charge of our country with UBI, we would be in a dystopia in a very short order. This is where you'd have to fix that. The only way that this UBI shit would work would be with a government of the people, by the people, for the people, with a guaranteed Bill of Rights that you can't touch, and a constitution that you pretty much can't touch, and a elected legislature that understands the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, and an electorate that understands their rights, and understands the founding document of our fucking society, which is the Declaration of Independence, which literally says that if your government is no longer for the people, by the people, and provides you freedom, you have a duty and a right to overthrow such governance. They use bigger, more flowery words than that. That's not a word for word quote, but go read the first two paragraphs to the Declaration of Independence. In my opinion, the Declaration of Independence trumps the Constitution, it trumps the Bill of Rights. Your first right in this country is to ensure that you are governed fairly and justly in a manner that is in accordance with your God. This is where the non-religious people will be like, well, I don't believe in God. Well, he believes in you. You have certain unalienable rights that are not granted to you by the Constitution. And the first and foremost of those rights is what's talked about in the Declaration of Independence, where if you live in a fucking tyranny, you have a right, duty, even obligation to overthrow said governance, to provide for your protection and future security and happiness. We hold among these truths to be life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thomas Jefferson, 1776. If you're not going to have that system, this will not fucking work. And this is where what the Democrats do all the fucking time is fucking dangerous. It's dangerous now. It's even more dangerous if you give all the power to the state. But of the various options with this humanoid robot shit, who are you going to trust? I don't trust the banks. I don't trust the big businesses. I don't trust, small groups of oligarchs. Maybe we could fucking elect a king, have a fucking, emperor like the British or some shit, but I think that shit inevitably ends in the French Revolution. The American system of government is not perfect, but it is better than all the others. And the only reason that it's horrible now is because of people like the Democrats who view the Constitution as something where I can interpret the First Amendment to mean that government censorship is okay, when literally the First Amendment to the Constitution says the freedom of speech shall not be infringed. The Constitution, in the Bill of Rights in particular, uses very plain, very simple language. And yet these people manage to interpret it as, well, we can tell you not to be of a certain religion and tell you not to speak and take away your guns. Of course we can. Why couldn't we? It's not like the First and Second Amendment protects that shit, right? It's like you're talking to a bunch of retards. And we would have to do something about that. And this is where there would need to be wars fought before this shit gets into place. I honestly think that's where things are headed in our country. The constitutionalists and the anti-constitutionalists, being the Republicans for the Constitution and the Democrats opposed to it, are just diverging in two separate paths to the point that it's going to come to a head at some point. And I think we need to do that well before we institute fucking UBI. And I'd also say that UBI is not the final step. UBI, if you continue to use it in the long term, is going to create a dystopia. You're leaving the rich people with their wealth and paying the poor people enough to live in some amount of luxury, I would say. I would say paying them the bare minimum to exist is not right. But neither is it right for, having people, drink champagne all day, every day, eat steak 3 meals a day, and have a 20-pound can of caviar every night. And this is where you'd have to have some sort of bridge from where we are now to a Star Trek-like future where there just is no money and you go to the store and get what you want. You'd have to train people to live like a normal fucking human being. Because you'd have a couple of problem groups in this that are the luxury for the sake of luxury people that'll just eat steak every day, or whatever it is that you want to say is luxurious. Some things cost more to produce than others, so they're going to be scarcer even with free production. You can't have a fucking country of 350 million people that eat steak 3 meals a day. The amount of cows that would take would be ridiculous. And this is where perpetuating our monetary system is probably the best way to solve this in the short term. In the short term, you need to have people living within the means of the economy. In the long term, maybe some of these problems can get ironed out, and or you can train a society not to be luxury for the sake of luxury people. And the other problem group that I would see is hoarders. And these would be people like me who would think, well, this system can't go on, it's going to end any fucking day, so I better use all of my, fake money, tax credits, whatever it is, even if it's just going to the store and getting free shit. They're going to use that to get as much shit as possible that doesn't go bad, whether that's canned goods and ammunition or whatever. So those people are going to be a problem too. And again, having a financial system that controls this would prevent that. I don't think you can just go immediately to a Star Trek-like future where there is no greed, no money, because we're greedy, lustful people. And people wouldn't trust the system at first. And then there'd be the people that want to live like Winston Churchill. You know, I'm going to drink a bottle of champagne for breakfast and have a bottle of scotch for lunch and eat like a king at every meal. Not everyone can do that. But I put it to you that we have enough supply of everything that we could provide people with a level of luxury that is heretofore unseen in this world. And as far as, really expensive stuff, there would still be the rich consuming that stuff, supposedly, for a while, but I think one of the shorter term goals would be going to phase 2 of this, which would be not universal basic income, but universal income for everyone. So that, whether you're a billionaire or you're a fucking guy in the street doing crack, you now have the same life and same amount of money. Do with it what thou willst. To not do that in a relatively short term with this going on, I think would be folly. For the simple reason that you're going to end up with an oligarch class that runs everything by controlling the politics with their money. So that would have to be a thing that would happen eventually, where it's not, oh, well, these people don't have, jobs anymore, so therefore they don't make money. No, it would have to be everyone gets their money from the government at all levels of society. And I think there'd be some amount of righteousness in some of this, because we have people in the society that on paper contribute a hell of a lot because they're a millionaire or billionaire or whatever, but like if you look at what they actually do to get that money, they're not manning the fucking salt mines. They work a 70-hour-a-week office job, maybe, as if they aren't to the point where they just don't work at all. And now they pay people to do that work for them, which is a lot of fucking people. And they sit back and use their money to make money. I think that entire class of person would be getting a downgrade in life, as they should, in my opinion. Like, this is where it's not really right that some people have super yachts and some people don't have fucking teeth. I've said this before on this channel, but if you look at some of the shit that the mega rich do, it's insanity. I don't know how we continue to have a society where everyone gets to do what they want to do with this, but like, instead of having a super yacht, you could have a sailboat. Or you could take cruises all the time. Something like that. Like, there's some version of this where people still get to live in a relative level of luxury, but there are not crazy oligarch billionaires who run the world. And if we can use the government to accomplish that, I'm kind of all for it, especially in a system where no one works. And to your point about, in the past, automation has created new jobs. And there being office jobs. My counter to these points is those things in the past didn't make a thing that completely replaced humans with a smarter, faster, harder working thing. Initially, there would be the people who were building and fixing the robots, but eventually that shit would be automated too. And to the point of like the office work and paperwork, that stuff I think is going to go well before the manual labor. Literally, you could have a couple of AI programs that run an office and do it entirely paperlessly. And boom, you know, there's a whole office building of paper pushers and bureaucrats that don't have a fucking job anymore. And we're not 20, 50 years away from that. We're like 4 or 5 years away from that. That's going to happen real soon. You know, the thing that I think of all the time is I have an uncle that does customer service phone calls in an office, and his entire company that he works for is going to very rapidly be AI. AI can answer the phones, AI can push the papers, AI can even be the manager of the fucking thing making the decisions at that place, probably. You know, maybe there's still 1 or 2 people that are necessary, but in the long run, I think even they would be replaced by AI. Anyway, that's part of what makes us arrive at this dystopia so quickly, is that it's not just the paper pushers that are getting replaced. It's not just the farmers that are getting replaced. It's not just the manual laborers that are getting replaced. It's everyone all at once. Everyone from doctors and fighter pilots to farmers, manual laborers, bureaucrats, paper pushers, truckers, literally name a job. The only ones that I can think of that would be immune to this are government officials, owners of said companies, therapists, people doing handcrafted goods that can still find a way to sell them, artists maybe, actors. Like, it's a pretty short list of people that are going to be unaffected by this. And because so many people are going to be affected by this, all of those people will be affected in tertiary means. You know, how do you afford to be a therapist when there's no one who has enough money for therapy? Yeah, you said this in your video that how do you have an economic system without consumers? I forget exactly how you worded it, but that's how I worded it in my video, and I think that's the real question here. And to that, going to UBI in the short term is the only answer. In the longer view, going to this, hey, everyone is the same, everyone makes government money, you know, we're all equal. And then from there, going to a Star Trek-like future where there is no money, there is no greed. You know, we conquer those things as a society, hopefully in a relatively short amount of time, but I don't know, this could take decades to get to a point where you just have a grocery store that you go to and fill up your cart and then leave. No checking out, no exchange of money, just go and get what you want. If you do that today, though, you're going to have people that, you know, go and load a cart up with steak and leave. You're going to have people that go and, you know, get them either the stuff that lasts the longest because they think the system's going to end, or the most expensive stuff that they can, whether it's for their own personal use or to trade to other people. Like, there's going to be an adjustment period, and I think you're going to need a financial system to do that, and that's where UBI comes in. This isn't a perfect system, and it would take some fiddling with to get right, and it would take having a government that you trust, and I don't think we have that currently. And maybe this is the first step on the road to UBI, is fixing what's wrong with our fucking society and government. And I think some of that would happen as a byproduct of this, because a lot of the political debate in this country is between rich people and poor people, or people who supposedly represent poor people and people who supposedly represent rich people, when in reality you have people representing rich people and people representing rich people that just say whatever the fuck they need to say to get elected. And the Republicans representing the perceived rich people, like, most of the billionaires are on the side of the Democrats. Why is that? It's not because they love poor people. It's because they control them. And it doesn't matter what the Democrats say they're for if they are at the end of the day controlled by an oligarch class. The Republicans tend to represent some billionaires, it's true, but a lot of millionaires, small businessmen, middle class America. And in general, I think their view is the more correct one of the two we are presented with now. But at the end of the day, this is going to come down to, are you for the Constitution or not for the Constitution? And hopefully eliminating economic woes and the class strife that we have in America would bring out a truer form of politics. What are you really for? Now that you're not voting for these people who are promising you welfare and whatever else, your money is guaranteed to you by the Constitution and the government. I think we would need an amendment to the Constitution that placed universal basic income or government income or whatever you want to call it in the same category as speech, religion, ownership of firearms. These things are untouchable, shall not be infringed. Like, if you go to prison, you still get your fucking government check, or it's waiting for you when you leave prison. Make it to where there is nothing that they can do to stop that if you are a citizen of the United States. It would be the only way to do it. Because otherwise, it's going to be the situation that you outlined, like with the Canadian truckers, where, we'll just freeze your accounts because you're protesting. We'll just stop your government checks. Problem solved. Now we can report to our rich oligarch overlords and say how we're conforming society to their will. All of that shit smells of dystopia to me, and I don't like it. And this is where, if that is the government that results from this, then the Declaration of Independence applies. There's going to be some wars. I don't see any other way around it. And my thing with the super rich and the billionaires and whatever is, what do you need that money for in the first place? In a world that you can't own a business. In a world that you probably can't own fucking land. I think we should have a system where people get houses and shit, and I don't know how that would work, but in reality, if the government makes all the money and the government pays all the people, the government would own all the land. And maybe, you could have your little farmstead or whatever that I don't know how it would work, but you make sure is yours and your lines in the future, somehow legally. But in general, we still want to have some wild places left in this country. We don't want to turn the entire country into New York and Chicago and LA. Let's pay paradise and put up a parking lot. I don't know. All of these things would have to be solved. And this is where I could make suggestions to solve some of these, but in reality, the solution would have to come from a new Continental Congress. It would have to be a body of the best minds among us elected to go and make this new utopia, basically. Otherwise, it's going to be a dystopia. The line between a utopia and a dystopia is fine. And I think the goal would be to make it to where most people are happy with the system. Most people are, not disenfranchised to the point that they're up in arms about it. Because if you do make it to where 90% of the people are fucking unhappy with their government, unhappy with the system, revolution is inevitable. If you make this new system a boot on people's throat that can be applied whenever they fucking want it to, it's not going to end well. The powers that be would think, oh great, we have control over the people. In reality, you have control over nothing. Because at the end of the day, some large percentage of America, at least, would come and hunt you down. Just for being the boot on their throat. This is where being a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and having a constitution and a government set up in such a way as to protect individual rights and to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness would be of paramount importance to a society engaged in this UBI space communism. It's important now, in today's day and age. It's more important with that shit going on. And I don't know how we transition into this Star Trek-like future with half of the country so fucking stupid that they scream for Big Daddy government to put their fucking boot on their throat. That's literally the situation we're in. We're in a situation where half of the country votes for Democrats because half of the country is so stupid that they view the shit that they're selling as being better than freedom. Anyway, that's my take on Sned's video. It was an interesting video. I liked your thoughts, man. I don't disagree with anything that you said, obviously, but at the same time, I think these are all just issues that you would have to work out and move past, because, like you said in your video, this is inevitable. Whether it's 10 years or 100 years, they're walking us down this road. And if we aren't careful, we're going to end up living in a dystopia like you described. If we aren't careful, you'll have some group of Democrat oligarchs who have all the political power and all of the money and just run the show, and a giant serf class of people who live on $12,000 a year because, well, Andrew Yang said $1,000 a month was enough money. This is going to take a lot of work and a lot of planning and a Continental Congress. Constitutional convention, that sort of thing. That's what it's going to take to transition through the shit that we're about to go through, I think. Our republic is being tested currently with this two-party bullshit, and it's about to be tested a lot more with the addition of the end of capitalism that our entire society is based on. And if we don't do it correctly, I think we end up like the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Romans, the Mongol Empire, the British Empire. Like, we just die. Maybe this is how China comes to rule the world. In some ways, I think their system would actually handle this adjustment better than us if we don't do it correctly. If we do it correctly, we will win. If we do it incorrectly, we will lose, and lose badly. Simply for the fact that they have a populace that is used to living in this sort of a system. I don't know how the rest of the world goes. Like, this is going to cause chaos around the world. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later.